Hello everyone, thank you for joining me today. This is Taliesin McKnight, and today we will examine the Hermetic doctrine of the fall of man. The fall of man according to Hermetism and Hermeticism. And today we will be looking at one text as our basis for this particular analysis, which is the Poemander. The Poemander is the first treatise of the Corpus Hermeticum. So there's no wondering what Hermetism and later Hermeticism thought about the fall of man, because we have the text itself. Below in the description box I will give a link for reference so that you could read the text itself. And so you could read from the Corpus Hermeticum where I'm getting this information. In addition to this, we are using the G.R.S. Mead translation, which is an older translation, but still useful. It is numbered, sort of like verses. So if I say number 13, then you can scroll to that part of the text and see where I'm getting the information. So the fall of man. First of all, what is Hermeticism and Hermetism? This is a Greek and Egyptian philosophy which dates back around 2,000 years ago. Hermetism is often considered to be a close cousin of Gnosticism. There are differences, however. Hermetism mostly comes from a pagan perspective, and Gnosticism usually tends to come from a Christian paradigm. This is not always the case, but often. But Hermetism and Gnosticism certainly do have some similarities. So the Corpus Hermeticum is composed of several different treatises, and we do have that for reference, which dates back to around the 2nd, 3rd century, this wisdom literature. Now, in the 15th century, in the Italian Renaissance, the Corpus Hermeticum was translated into Latin by Marsilio Ficino. He did that for Cosimo de' Medici, the ruler of Florence, and there was a Hermetic revival in the Renaissance, which is what we call Hermeticism, which from this you got a lot of alchemy, magic, and this in turn serves as a sort of foundation stone for our modern Western esoteric or mystery tradition. So anyways, these are wisdom texts which date back around 2,000 years ago. So what is a fall? Before we've talked about very briefly what Hermetism and Hermeticism is. What is the fall? The fall of man. This implies that man once existed within a perfect state of bliss, a sort of divine status, and a fall implies a sort of degeneration from a primal state of perfection. Many of us come from a Judeo-Christian background, so many of us are familiar with the concept of the fall of man. However, in this case is not caused by obedience, but rather by a love of matter, by ignorance, and by being enslaved to our passions. Now, the Poemander. Now, the word Poemander, I've anglicized it, Poemander. There's a little debate on the etymology of this. It used to be widely believed that it means man-shepherd or shepherd of men. You'll notice in the G.R.S. Mead translation that I'm referencing, that's how he takes it. Some scholars today believe that it comes from Poemandres, which means knowledge of Ra in Coptic. Whatever the case may be, this is the Poemander and this is the text that we are referencing. Now before I begin, it's important to realize that there is no one Hermetic dogma or doctrine. It's not like there's a catechism where they all agree. You'll see some different perspectives within Hermetic literature. So anyways, it takes the form of a vision. The person speaking in the text doesn't really identify himself, but many people believe that it's the actual vision of Hermes Trismegistus. So that's interesting. It begins with a vision. Okay, now we're talking about the fall of man, so I don't want to dwell on the whole text itself. Okay. Anyways, he sees a divine vision. And he asks to know the nature of the all, the nature of God and of man. So anyways, like I said, this is numbered. So if you click the link that I provided, now I'll be uploading this video probably to different websites eventually. So you may not have a link in your description box, whatever. Just pull up a copy of G.R.S. Mead's translation, which is an older translation but still useful. Pull this up and you'll see what I'm talking about, and it's also numbered for reference. So if I say number 6, you can scroll to that part of the text. So there's no doubting where I get my information. Okay? First of all, much like you see in Platonism, in the dialogue called the Timaeus of Plato, the Creator is not the high, one unknowable God. The Creator is a secondary being called the Demiurge. You'll see the concept of the Creator God, or the half-creator, the Demiurge, in Gnosticism. You'll find it in Platonism. And although Hermetism purports to be a Greek and Egyptian philosophy, a lot of it seems to be derived from Greek philosophy. Okay. So anyways, so God, the one and knowable God, who throughout is referred to as the divine mind. So God is not seen as some sky daddy flying through the sky. In Hermetism, in this case, God is referred to as the all, or the one, or the divine mind. Not to dwell on this, but you could see from the hymn at the very back that this is, it says, Holy art thou, O God, the universal's Father. Holy art thou, O God, whose will perfects itself by means of its own powers. Holy art thou, who didst by the word, the logos, make to consist the things that are. Holy art thou, of whom all nature, of which all nature has been made an image. So this is the God that the universe is simply an image of. The next line says, Holy art thou, whose form nature has never made. So the universe is an image of the divine, but God is way more than just way transcendent. Nature's never fully made the form of the divine. Holy art thou, more powerful than all power, transcending all preeminence. And this part's really interesting. It says, O thou unutterable, unspeakable, whose name not but the silence can express. So you kind of get the idea of the Hermetic concept of God as the one, or the all, or the divine mind. Pretty deep stuff. Now God, just like you see in Platonism, just like you see in Gnosticism, did not create the world. God created the demiurge, who's the creator God, who made the universe. Now, Hermetism takes for granted the Aristotelian, the old astrological map of the cosmos. I made a diagram here. It's not very pretty, but it'll work. Here is the Earth. And around the Earth are 7 planets. 7 astrological planets. Okay. So anyways, the demiurge created the 7 planets encircling the Earth and sent them turning with his whirl. Okay? Again, you see this in Plato's Republic, at the end of his Republic, the myth of air. You see it, the Roman philosopher Cicero in his De Republica has the myth of Aridaeus. You see it in Plato's Timaeus. So you see this idea found going around the Mediterranean at the time. So here's the Earth and the 7 planets. You have the Moon, Mercury, Venus, the Sun, Mars, Jupiter, and Saturn. So this is the old map of the cosmos. So God, the divine mind, created the demiurge, who created the 7 planets and all that. Then it says that God made man as a divine being. Man was made co-equal to God. So man had a divine status. In fact, this could rightly be referred to as the divine man. So you see an image of what man was before the fall. Before the fall, man was a divine being, co-equal to God. Yeah, co-equal to the Creator, the demiurge, who's his brother. So, way above creation, man is seen as a divine being. Okay. Now, where am I getting this information? First of all, the demiurge, if you go to, it's not really a verse, but number 9, and God the mind, being male and female. So God's a divine mind, male and female. As light and life subsisting, brought forth another mind. If you want to go to this text, it's there. Brought forth a second mind, the demiurge, who, to give things form, he created the demiurge, the creator, who formed 7 rulers who enclose the cosmos that the senses perceive. Men call their ruling fate. So that verse 9 of the Poemandres, where I'm getting this, God made the demiurge, who made the 7 planets and all that turns around this. It's the solar system, basically. Now, if you go to verse 12 of G.R.S. Mead's Poemander, it says, "But all-Father mind did bring forth man co-equal to himself." God made man equal to himself. This is not a subject to a master. This is a divine man, with whom God fell in love, the image of his sire. In very truth, God fell in love with his own form, man, and on him did bestow all of his own powers. So man was a divine being. And man looked at the works of the demiurge and wanted to create too. Verse 13 of the Poemander, "And when man gazed upon what the demiurge had created in the universe, man too wished to create, and assent was given to him by God." Changing his state to the creative sphere, in which he was to have his whole authority. Man was to have his whole authority over creation. He gazed upon his brother, the demiurge's creatures, And the 7 planets fell in love with him and gave him each a power in their own ordering. So the demiurge created the cosmos. Man was to take part in creation. This is our primal state. Now we get to the fall. How do we go from a deathless divine being equal to God, who was going to help create power over the whole universe, according to this myth? We have to remember, this is symbolic, probably myth and metaphor. This is not to be taken literally as a history. It's a myth, okay? It's a metaphor, a symbol. It's a fable. It tells certain truths, okay? Now, man is this divine being. Next, it says that man goes through the spheres and looks at nature. And man sees his reflection in the water on the earth. And man wished to live in it and fell into matter. So the fall of man is simply the divine man wanting to dwell in nature. And when man came into nature, nature wrapped herself around man as her lover. And this created mortal man. So the reason we fell is by falling into the material world. We wanted to live in nature. And now we're subject to nature's laws. Now we suffer death, the cycle of life. We're subject to fate as mortals. So the reason that we're mortal from this limited perspective is our descent into matter, into the creation. Man was above creation and fell into it. This is the fall. It is the imprisonment of consciousness. Now, where am I getting this information? Where the hell am I getting this? Well, if you go to 14, verse 14, not really verse, you know what I mean, verse 14 of the Poemander. So he who hath the authority over all the mortals in the cosmos. Man had authority over everything in creation. Man bent his face downward through the spheres, breaking right through their strength, and showed to downward nature God's fair form. So man showed to nature, to earth, God's fair form. And when nature saw the form of beauty, which could never satiate, in him man who now possessed within himself each single energy of all 7 rulers, as well as God's own form, nature smiled with love. For it was as though she had seen the image of man's fairest form upon her water, his shadow on her earth. The divine man, in turn, beholding the image, his reflection in the water, existing in her, loved it and willed to live in it. And with the will came act, and so he vivified the form devoid of reason. And nature took the object of her love and wound herself completely around him, and they were intermingled, for they were lovers. And this is why, beyond all creatures on the earth, man is twofold. Mortal because of the body, but because of the essential man, immortal, divine. Though deathless and possessed of sway over all creation, yet doth man suffer as a mortal doth, subject to fate. Thus, though above the harmony, within the harmony he hath become a slave. Though male and female, from a father male and female, and though man is sleepless from a sleepless sire, yet is he overcome by sleep. Basically, man is a god clothed in rags, to quote the Bhagavad Gita. I think it's the Bhagavad Gita. Anyways, some Eastern text. Okay. So, contrasting this with the story told in the Bible, in Genesis, Well, some people take a deeper interpretation of that. You know, stories, myths have different levels of meaning. But contrasting with your everyday exoteric interpretation of Genesis given by most fundamentalists, and one, its ignorance, we're a subject, and its constant disobedience to appeasing some father. In Hermetism, man had power over all creation, and the only reason that we now have evil, we now have ignorance, suffering, death, is because we now live in creation which has limits. Okay? Now, it's not demonizing the body. It's not saying the body's bad. It's just saying that now we're imperfect. We're mortal. We're subject to death, decay. We have evil. We have suffering, disease. So living in this world, we are subject to fate, to destiny, to the cycles of life. So, basically our soul is trapped in this world. It's not saying that the world's an illusion, okay? It's just saying that we are now in this limited perspective. Some Hermetic texts seem to hint at reincarnation, okay? Maybe it's not real clear in the Poemander, but some texts clearly talk about reincarnation, that we live many lives bound in this world. It sounds a lot like Buddhism in some ways, that through ignorance, through being enslaved to our passions, through our own cravings, through our love of the body, our love of this world, we're bound simply because we want to be here. We're in love with it, so we don't want to leave. So the way back up is by, in a sense, denying the body, denying this world. Again, it's not demonizing the body. It's just saying, as long as you're in love with this world, which is the reason we fell, is by love. Love is the reason for our fall. We love nature. We have to love our divine status, overcome our passions, and reach enlightenment. That's the only way we can go back up the spheres and once again be as a divine being with power over all nature. Now, where am I getting this information? Now, if you go to 19 of the Poemander, again, I gave a link to the text so you could read the text and see where I'm getting this information. I'd really, if you really, want to, please click the link and you'll see that it's numbered, and scroll down to 19. Past 19 slightly, but in the middle of 19. And he who thus learned to know himself, know yourself, hath reached the good which doth transcend abundance. But he who through a love that leads astray, this is key, expends his love upon his body. He's the one who expends his love on his body. He stays in darkness wandering and suffering through the senses things of death. Okay. If you go down a little, like at the bottom of 20, it says, "It is because the gloomy darkness is the root and base of the material frame. From it came the moist nature, from this the body and the sense world was composed, and from this body death doth the water drain." So anyways, if you go to 24, kind of in the middle of 24. Well, 24 it says, "Well hast thou taught me all as I desired, O mind." He's speaking to the divine mind. "And now pray tell me further of the nature of the way above, as it is now for me." To this Poemander said, "When the material body This is the way back up. This is how we have gnosis, the ascension of consciousness, to reclaim our lost estate and to reclaim our divine status, according to the Poemander. It says, to this Poemander said, when the material body is to be dissolved, first thou surrenderest the body by itself into the work of change, and thus the form thou hast does vanish, and thou surrenderest thy way of life, void of its energy, unto the diamond. The body's senses next pass back into their sources, becoming separate, and resurrect as energies. And passion and desire withdraw into that nature which is devoid of reason. Verse 25. And thus it is that man doth speed his way thereafter upward through the harmony. Okay, looking at this map again. To the first zone, he gives the energy of growth and waning. That's the moon. To the second zone, device of evils, now de-energized, Mercury. The next one is Venus. Unto the third, the guile of desires, de-energized. Unto the fourth, the sun, domineering arrogance, de-energized. Unto the fifth, Mars, unholy daring and rashness of audacity, de-energized. Unto the sixth, Jupiter, striving for wealth by evil means, deprived of his aggrandizement. Unto the seventh, Saturn, ensnaring falsehood. So we ascend back up through the 7 planets. Now this concept, again, of ascending through the 7 planets, or the 7 planets and the soul, you find it in the Roman philosopher Cicero, in his book De Republica, in the myth of Aridaeus. You also find it in Plato's Timaeus. You find it in Gnosticism. Of course, you find it in the Hermetic treatise called On the 8th and the 9th, which was discovered in the Nag Hammadi library, discovered in Egypt in 1945. And also, this is interesting, not really going there completely, but if you study the myth of Ishtar in Babylonian mythology, how she goes through the 7 gates and loses her spiritual adornments. I'm not saying it's the same, but it's interesting. And this map of our ascent and our fall is exactly as the tree of life in the Kabbalah. Now, what the hell am I talking about? Well, these levels are the tree of life in the world of Asaya. You have Malkuth, the physical. Above that is Yesod, which is the sphere of the moon, in the world of Asiya. Above that is Hod, which is Mercury. Above that is Netzach, Venus. Tiferet is the sun. And then Geburah is Mars. Chesed is Jupiter. And Bina is Saturn, and then Chokmah is the zodiac, Maslot. You know, and then you go all the way to Keter. So this Gnostic, Hermetic worldview is found in the Kabbalah, in the Tree of Life. So that's interesting. So some people think that the Kabbalah may be, in a sense, a form of Jewish Gnosticism. So that's interesting. So anyways, our way back up, to put it into modern Hermetic terms, as in Hermeticism, blending in Kabbalah, Rosicrucianism, tarot, things like that, which you can do. The Revival, which was eclectic and blended in all kinds of elements that don't go together. The Chariot card, which comes from Plato's Chariot allegory of the soul, mastering our passions. We're stuck in matter. The Wheel of Fortune, the cycles of lives. So, self-mastery, reach enlightenment, which is gnosis. And that is what the Poemander says. So, if you want to know what the Hermeticism and Hermetism says about the fall of man, that's basically it, found within the first treatise of the Corpus Hermeticum. So, that, in a nutshell, is the fall of man, according to Hermetic doctrine. In some upcoming videos, we will be delving deeper into the Corpus Hermeticum. So, if you listen to my videos, there's no wondering, because we're looking at the texts themselves. I guarantee you that if you study this with me, you'll know with references and clear sources what Hermeticism teaches. There's a lot of crap going around on the internet, so my goal is to be as accurate as possible, as precise as possible, as brief as possible. And you'll notice in my videos, I talk about Hermetism, Gnosticism, Rosicrucianism, alchemy, the Kabbalah. I actually, go even into hoodoo, folk magic. People are like, where the hell are you going with this? My goal is to look at what different people believe without bias. So we can see what these people believe, what these people over here believe, and draw our own conclusions. So anyways, that is one way of looking at the Hermetic fall of man. Thank you for joining me, and once again, this is Taliesin McKnight. Have a great day, y'all.